California love.
Hello, Free Rotation Nation, and welcome to another episode. I am joined I'm here with Becky
Me.
and Chris.
Hey.
We don't know what's happening with Becky, but we have discussed
Me.
some form of therapy.
Yay.
This week we're continuing our true.
Unsolved mysteries.
I'm gonna redo this. This week we're continuing our true crime unsolved mysteries edition. I don't like the way that came out. This week we're continuing our unsolved true crime series. There. Just 9 different ways of saying the same thing. But no one gives a shit about. And we are talking about Tupac Shakur.
Now, Angie, who is Tupac? Oh, that guy.
Thank you, Becky.
I'm trying to contribute something because I really don't know a lot.
The whitest comment ever. Who was Tupac?
Who that Tupac? Who that dog?
What am Tupac?
Okay. Well, Tupac Amaru Shakur was born Lassane Parish, Crooks, June 16th, 1971. He's Gemini. A lot of people don't know he was also known as Machiavelli. Tupac sold 75 million records worldwide, and he was known for addressing contemporary social issues that plagued inner cities and is considered a symbol of, I put Activision, which I'm pretty sure it's not Activision.
Activism?
Activision's gaming. A symbol of activists against inequality. So that's kind of Tupac in a nutshell. That's what most people know. Tupac, he was a rapper.
I'll just say I only knew Tupac as a rapper. I mean, to be honest, that's a music genre I didn't really listen to.
But even saying he's rap, like, when you say that, you don't even realize what rap is. Most people think rap's just mumbling some words to a beat.
Are you saying Post Malone isn't a rapper?
I'm saying that the scene has changed a lot from Tupac and Biggie.
Yeah.
And Beat It.
Look at Chris's face.
The Sugar Hill Gang?
Yeah, they different.
Okay.
They're like Gen Zs of the hip-hop scene.
There's also a difference between rap and hip-hop. Like,
Yeah.
that's kind of...
Rap is a part of hip-hop, but Tupac was hip-hop.
Okay.
So, yeah. And we're going to go into that, about more of that. So, Shakur's parents... Shakur. That's a very southern way of saying it. Tupac Shakur.
That Shakur feller.
Yeah. Shakur. Well, and what a lot of people don't realize is that his parents were political activists and were Black Panther Party members. Mm-hmm. He was raised by his mother in New York, and before they moved to Baltimore. And then they ended up moving to the San Francisco Bay Area in 1988. So when he released his debut album, Tupacalypse, in 1991, he became a central figure in the West Coast hip-hop scene. He ended up releasing pretty much an album every year. Tupac released his debut album, Tupacalypse, in 1991, and he became a central figure in West Coast hip-hop. He received further acclaim with his follow-up releases, Strictly for My...
That word. Not that...
A word I won't respectfully say.
Hard in.
Yeah.
Hard
in
art.
1993, and then Me Against the World in 1995. However, in 1996, he abandoned his introspective lyrics for gangster rap and released his first Diamond Certified album, All Eyes on Me.
See, okay, I have heard of All Eyes on Me.
Well, that's when he signed with Death Row Records.
Okay.
That's the one pretty much everybody's familiar with.
Yeah.
But he was also a successful actor. He starred in movies Juice in 1992, Poetic Justice in 1993, Above the Rim 94, Bullet 96, Gridlock 97, and Gang Related in 97. And he was a wonderful actor. Like, he was acting alongside Janet Jackson.
Jada Smith.
Not saying
Poetic
that.
Justice.
Yeah. He had some posthumous releases that are still continuing because he was a very prolific writer. He was a poet.
I do remember, like, a few years ago what they were releasing, like, Tupac's unreleased stuff.
Right.
And all I remember was that they talked about how he had just written so much stuff that they could release stuff for a long time after his death.
Right. And 2 of his albums ended up being certified diamond, and only 9 hip-hop albums ever have been certified diamond.
Oh.
Which is, like, the highest, like, you can get. There's
Right.
gold, platinum, diamond. In 2002, he was inducted into the Hip Hop Hall of Fame, and in 2017, on his first eligible year, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like what the generic stuff most people know about Tupac. You know, his music, oh, he was a gangster rapper. But he was a lot more. He was a hip hop artist, and so the question comes up, what is hip hop?
Okay.
So to truly understand Tupac and what was going on at the time, it's important to understand who his parents were and who he was as a hip hop artist and as he related back to his parents.
We're going to pause for 1 second.
Uh-huh.
You said, what is hip hop? This
Oh,
is hip
no.
hop.
No. Yeah. Yeah. By the whitest lady ever doing hip hop.
You see how my one by socks is untucked? That's hip hop.
I think the first thing you need to know about hip hop
Oh,
is all
boy.
about your posture. You know, growing up, my posture was really bad. My mom used to tell me all the time, stand up straight, stand up straight. And you know what? I was standing up straight. Hip hop is this: 1, 2, 3, 4, hit. Ah. And the more relaxed you are, that's what makes it hip hop.
That's what makes it hip hop.
This is the
Oh.
first thing I will say to you.
Sorry.
That is definitely what makes it hip hop.
When he said, what is hip hop? I'm like, this is hip hop.
Yeah.
Is how my brain works.
Just a white lady wearing a one of those big old what are they?
Tracksuit.
Tracksuits and like really baggy pants and like doing kind of a plie like jazz.
She even
Yeah.
says it's
hands.
plie and jazz hands.
I know.
Yeah. So it was just funny because hip hop is not a white genre. It's just not. Hip hop is more than a genre, though. It involves rap music, which is a musical technique employed in hip hop music. But hip hop is a cultural movement that sweeps up music, poetry, dance, art, fashion, and political philosophy. They call those the elements of hip hop. Hip hop was born in the late 1970s in New York as a youth movement. Its core musical ideas came out of funk and R&B, and lyrically focused on social issues. So this is when gangster rap takes a deviation from hip hop, so it becomes a subgenre of
Right.
hip hop, because really hip hop was what Tupac was in the beginning.
Right. And I guess gangster rap, if you were to put it as a subgenre, is talking about what's happening in the streets.
Right.
But it's more so regarding the gang wars that were occurring between
Yeah.
the two.
And there was a-
happening
What's happening in the
in the
streets?
street?
Well, I mean, technically that is what is happening. A lot of street violence.
I'm going to edit this out, but don't you know what's happening in the streets?
Oh, my bad.
Yeah. I'm
I
sorry.
mean, here's the thing.
Tupac would have never said streets. He was very educated. The vocal style of hip hop is staccato, simple, and repetitive with a very steady beat. So that's why when you think of 2 Live Crew, this is a really bad thing, but like fuck the police.
Right.
It's just repeated.
Okay.
Or in Tupac's song Something Wicked, where he says something wicked this way comes, and he just repeats it over and over. That's hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
On the West Coast hip hop scene, this is where you get the great innovators like Tupac and Snoop, but the hip hop is loose and more confrontational.
Mm-hmm.
So hip hop started on the East Coast, and then when it moved west, it became more gangster rap. But when you compare the LA scene in the 80s at the time, I mean, think about it, you've got the Rodney King beatings and stuff happening in the 80s and 90s. Like, this is what we're talking about.
Right.
In the South, we have our own version of hip hop amongst the African American population called trap music.
Oh.
Yeah, trap music doesn't need to have lyrics associated with it. Trap is more about expressing electronically, and it came from the fact that it was born in trap houses, aka crack houses.
Right.
DJ Kool is associated with really starting off in the birth of hip hop in 1973 at a dance bash in New York. He had 2 records on turntables, which he spun at the same time, and he focused mostly on the repetitive dance beats.
I was about to say, you it's the OG when you could use the name DJ Kool.
Yes.
Like, you didn't have to, like, deviate
Right.
from anything
That
else.
copyrighted? Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Because DJ is an element of hip hop.
Right.
It's funny you say that, because there are elements of hip hop. So you have DJing. That's why you get DJ Kool or MC Hammer. They're 2 different things. So DJing is one of the elements, and it's the artistic handling of beats. That's literally the
Right.
definition. MCing, like I said, MC Hammer, or MC Chris, is putting spoken words of poetry to a beat.
Okay.
So generally an MC will work with the DJ. So that's why you got these duos and groups. Like Thug Life.
Right.
Because he always worked with pretty much the same DJ. You've got breaking, which is the dance form. Writing, which is painting highly stylized graffiti. Theater and lit, which is combining hip-hop themes into drama, poetry, and stories like what Maya Angelou did. Mm-hmm. And you have the knowledge of self, which is the moral, social, spiritual principles that inform and inspire. So hip-hop as a cultural movement, through their songs and all these other elements, were supposed to teach African Americans where they came from and what's happened to them so that they could learn and grow. Because there wasn't much effort put in the way of teaching. Mm-hmm. These are basically their urban legends, and they're urban stories.
Yeah.
They're passing down from generation to generation. Unfortunately, a lot of what they have to pass down is violence.
Right.
Because that's what's happened to them. So, any questions about hip hop? Don't ask the lady.
I was about to say, I didn't hear the word plie one time mentioned in it.
Yeah. I mean, you have dancing, and it's not plie and jazz hands. It's breakdancing, and each of those elements breaks down. into there into different elements that make up the elements, and there's a certain lingo that goes with it. And when you think of fashion, there is a fashion associated with hip hop, so there is different ways of walking in this day and age. Hip hop fashion has become the pants and pulled down below the boxers. Like it's evolved, not always in a good way, but it has evolved.
Yeah, like I said, this is a new category of I always just associated hip hop and rap as just like genres that lived out there, and that was it.
Yeah, so rap is a form of expressing hip hop, and so, but you hear a lot of rap, like mumble rapping or gangster rapping, and you think, oh, that's hip-hop. But, like Love and Hip Hop, watch the movie. It'll teach you a lot about actually what hip-hop is as a culture. So, we're going to go more into who Tupac was as a person, because he's so much more than a rapper. He's so much more than a drug dealer, criminal who was murdered. And I would like to tell you a little bit more about him. So, because it goes into basically the conspiracy. There's 3 leading conspiracies about who killed him, or even if he died, and who may have done it. Bum, bum, bum.
I'm going to go with he's not dead. Because that simulation they did in that one thing, too realistic.
Well, and here's the thing, like, so many people witnessed it, and nobody, even like on the down low, has ever come forward and said anything.
Right.
It's crazy. Especially when we get into the FBI documents and the FBI investigation.
So it always ties back to the FBI.
Well,
those sneaky fucks.
We're not going to get into it now, but there was a pretty big deal going on.
Okay.
So, born in June 16th, 1971 in East Harlem. When he was a year old, his mom renamed him to the name he has now because she wanted him to remember that he was more than a neighborhood. He came from a world culture, not just a neighborhood. So she named him after the last Incan emperor who was executed in Peru. Sorry, I hurt my head. I don't even know how. She named him after the descendant of the last Incan ruler executed in Peru in 1781 after his failed riot against Spanish rule.
It's kind of foreshadowing.
It is. Everything in his life seems to foreshadow this. So she wanted him to remember that, yeah, he wasn't just from this East Harlem neighborhood. He wasn't just from the streets. He was from a world culture, and all of these influences from hundreds of years back shaped who he was and where he was in the world today. Speaking of his mom, her name was Alice Faye Williams, and his dad was Billy Garland. She ended up changing her name to Alini Shakur when she met his stepdad. Mm-hmm. His dad kind of fucked off, but they were both big members in the Black Panther Party, and his mom was actually tried in the Panther 21 court trials, but she was acquitted of all 150 charges. And if you're not familiar with Panther 21, those were the ones who were bombing police stations and government buildings and killing cops.
So she got acquitted of like
All charges.
150 charges?
150 charges
Holy
against
shit.
her.
Yeah, I think that was part of the Weather Underground, all that good stuff that was going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Other family members were involved in the Black Panther's Black Liberation Army, including his stepfather, Tupac Shakur, who spent 4 years among the FBI's 10 most wanted list.
Oh.
Yeah, his godfather, Elmer Geronimo Pratt, was a high-ranking Black Panther who was convicted of killing a schoolteacher in a 1968 robbery. Now, however, after 27 years, he was released. Want to know why?
Why?
It was found out that the prosecution had evidence that he was actually innocent, and they held it.
I am shocked.
Shocked and horrified.
I am shocked
What?
as usual.
You wanted to put a high-ranking Black, Panther militant away, and this is how you chose to do it? What?
Yeah.
So these are his early influences in the stories he grew up hearing. In 1984, his mom moved him to Baltimore, where he transferred to the Baltimore School for the Arts. He studied acting, poetry, jazz, and performed in Shakespeare plays, where he said a lot of the themes in those Shakespeare plays were very similar to the problems that gang warfare faced today. Mm-hmm. He said this has just historically always been a thing. Here he met Jada Pinkett and she became the subject of a lot of his poetry.
I will tell you this. I did not know Tupac and Jada were a thing.
Yeah, for years.
Yeah.
She still writes letters, and her kids write letters wishing he would come back.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
He said that
Fucking
Jada
bananas.
was the biggest love of his heart, and he would always be there for her. And she said that they had a relationship even closer than that of brother and sister, that he would always be a part of her.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Chris Rock could have not
She was
have
in
been
some
slapped
of his videos. Yeah.
if
Yeah.
it hadn't been for Tupac dying.
Oh, he would have never insulted Jada if Tupac were still alive. I'll tell you that right now.
It'd have been different.
Yeah.
I mean, you see roasts and they go after some hard dudes. There's a difference between comedy and being seriously malicious. Mm-hmm. That's the part that bothers me on that whole thing. Is like Chris Rock's a fucking comedian. He made a fucking G.I. Jane joke 30 years after the movie.
Yeah.
Maybe calm the fuck down.
Yeah. Yeah. He wasn't maliciously attacking her
No.
or her disease.
No.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just have a big thing for
No, it's
stand-up.
fine.
Like,
No.
comedy's like the last bastion of free speech, and
Yeah.
I will defend the fuck out of it.
Mm-hmm. He won a lot of rapping contests, and he listened to various musics from really proactive people like Kate Bush, Sinead O'Connor, U2, and Culture Club. He liked to immerse himself in people who were activists and trying to politically make a difference.
So other social movements that were not necessarily in, like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Also, if you watch the Digital Underground video for the Humpty Dance, he's also in there
I know,
as a member of Digital Underground.
Yeah. In 1988, he moved to Marin City, California. He didn't finish high school, but he did later get a GED. He and his mom moved to an incredibly poor area, and it just wasn't feasible. If you listen to his song, Dear Mama, he talks about, what happened to her and how she became a crack addict, and how he said there was no legit way to earn money, so he did what he could to help his mom. And he blamed her for a lot, but he also talks about, the how hard it is for a single black woman to raise, young black men in, these impoverished places where, every black man is looked at as immediately
or a
criminal
felon.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So here you see, like, we have this merging of this hip hop culture, which is really about peace, love, understanding, kindness, and growth. The Black Panther stories and stuff he had heard, and his family were still militant in the Black Panther parties. And we have these cultural identities of, like, Kate Bush and Sinead O'Connor. And if you've heard anything about Sinead or know anything, she was very highly against the Queen and the war with Ireland.
Catholics in general.
Fuck the Pope on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah. That was the last thing she ever did until people just didn't give a shit anymore.
Yeah.
And that was, 20 years later?
And she continued.
She kept doing stuff, but it was just like,
Yeah.
they wouldn't put her in any kind of public
They
spotlight.
blacklisted her.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're trying to make, music that means something and they blacklist you, you're kind of fucked.
Right. And Tupac even had a line in one of his raps that says, if you're black, you better stay strapped, fuck the world. It's actually in a song called Fuck the World, where he talks about how he tried, as a young man, he, tried really hard to overcome his circumstance, but, it doesn't matter what you are, who you do, if you're black, you better stay strapped, because cops are coming for you, white people are coming for you, black people are coming for you, there's just no getting out of it. In 1989, he began recording under the stage name MC New York. So I automatically know as MC,
Yeah.
he was a rapper. Can't read my writing there. Yeah, that's nice. He met Layla Steinberg, who led his poetry classes that he continued to take, and she soon became his manager. And she's the one who got him signed to Digital Underground and as a roadie and a backup dancer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so his first steps into the, foray was as a dancer, hip-hop dancer.
With
Right.
Shock G, and Humpty Hump.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like what Chris was saying, that's why you see him dancing in that video. In 1991, he debuted as Tupac, the number 2, and then PAC, on Digital Underground and Interscope Records.
I will say my ignorance was every time I went to look for a Tupac song on Spotify, it would not come up. And I'm like, why is that? Because it's a 2. I understand now.
Yeah.
I understand the assignment. But this is like seriously like why I don't know I just don't know anything.
Yeah. He met Randy Stretch Walker, and they became fast friends, and they would stay friends. In 1991, he released Tupacalypse Now, known for poetically depicting individual struggles under socioeconomic disadvantage. So he really like put into perspective what it was like to live in, the what did I call it? God, I'm so privileged I can't even remember the projects. He really put into perspective what it was like to live in the projects and what it was like being single black moms or single black dads. And but Dan Quell said, "There's no reason for a record like this to be released. It has no place in society." So this is where Tupac infamously Dan Quell, the vice president at the time. So Tupac infamously said, "Oh, basically, I'm paraphrasing, but I didn't know I was going to be blamed for every single thing every black male has ever done in this society.
Nice.
Fuck me."
Right.
But this was so this one had Brenda's Got a Baby, If My Homie Calls, and Trapped. So Brenda's Got a Baby is interesting to me because it talks about how as a poor young black girl who gets taken advantage of by an older man, she gets pregnant. Her family doesn't care. They're just trying to make it through the day. And he's like, "I know you can't tell your family because they don't want to have to deal with it." So she ends up hiding her pregnancy, and then she finally has the baby. And basically his lyrics say, she's on the bathroom floor. She doesn't know what to keep and what to throw away. So she takes the whole baby, wraps it up, and throws it away. Because nobody's ever wanted her. Why would they want, a black baby born into poverty, not taken care of? So she's essentially like, if they don't want me, they're not going to want him. So it was pretty powerful because it kind of makes you think. I've always thought about this song in these things we hear about girls who throw away their babies. And I'm not talking about like the privileged white cheerleader who doesn't want to tell her parents, although I still think about what they must go through at home. But these, babies you find in dumpsters are left on doorsteps. And you're like, what was that woman thinking? Well,
They don't know what to do.
when you think about the fact that you're not wanted,
Right.
and you have no idea how to care for something because you're not even cared for, and you're 12 years old, and
That's why you have safe haven laws now, because of that exact reason.
yeah.
Because the people would be prosecuted. They do be prosecuted.
Yeah. In February of 93, he released Strictly for My... I'm just going to say people. Strictly for My People. And it emphasizes his socio-political views. It features I Get Around, which was his popular breakthrough. Now, this was the song that people started... His name actually came out. Oh, wow, this is a great song. It's a party anthem.
Right.
And he also released Keep Your Head Up as an anthem for women's empowerment. And one of the things I like about Tupac is even today, a lot of his views and his lyrics continue to really hit home. So in Keep Your Head Up, there's the line that says, "And since a man can't make one, he has no right to tell a woman when and where to create one." Talking about, abortion.
Yeah.
And he talks...
Seems pretty prevalent
Seems
right now
pretty
for what's
prevalent.
going on in 2022.
Mm-hmm. And before this line, he's talking about, you know, if you don't teach your sons to respect women, stand up for women, kill for women, then you're going to raise a group of men who will rape ladies. And, you know, this song just... And everybody's heard this song, I'm pretty sure. It's the one that goes, ooh, child. Okay. Also in 1993, while visiting LA, he met the Notorious B.I.G., who asked for a drug dealer to introduce them. At this time, Notorious, or we're going to call him Biggie, because Biggie wasn't big. He wasn't made yet. And he really wanted to meet Tupac, because, you know, he really liked what he had to say. They were introduced, and they became really good friends, which a lot of people don't know. They used to be exceptional friends.
I did know that, is that at one point they were friends, and then at some point they turned to be rivals based on where they worked as
East
in
Coast,
the record.
West Coast,
Yeah.
hip-hop. If they'd visit one another back and forth on the coast, and every time they did, they would... Shakur would have Biggie even come up on stage and rap with him, and they recorded 2 songs together, Running from the Police and House of Pain. And the word is that Biggie had asked Tupac to actually manage him, and Tupac said no, because in Biggie's mind, he was like living the life. But the truth was, Tupac wasn't making a whole lot of money at this point. Mm-hmm. He had a lot of legal troubles as well. But Tupac said, no, you should meet with Diddy and let him manage you. Diddy being Sean Combs, P. Diddy.
P. Diddy?
Puff Daddy, yeah.
All these people that are in PG movies now.
Yeah, really, really weird. And that's one of the things that lets me know Disney isn't that wholesome. But
Disney owns everything.
Yeah, he said Puffy would make him a star. Tupac invited him to join Thug Life. So in this time frame, Tupac was in Thug Life. It didn't last, but he invited him to join Thug Life. But Biggie decided he wanted to create Junior Mafia, and he did it with Lil' Kim and Lil' Cease.
Look, okay, I'm catching up now.
You're dealing with a lot of like the up and coming New York scene.
Yeah.
So like that's who he was around.
Yeah. And I mean, he really had to focus. He had to be okay where he was.
Yeah.
And so he and Tupac stayed friends up until Tupac was shot in 1994.
The first time.
Yeah, this was
Okay.
the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and then Me Against the World was released while Tupac was incarcerated in 1995. No, I'm actually going to stop here and talk about the shooting.
Okay.
Because this is 94, and I want to...
Yeah.
So in 1994, one of the reasons he blamed Biggie for getting shot is because he was shot at Quad Studios. So on November 30th, James Jimmy Henchman Rosemond, he was offered... He called up Tupac, and he said, hey, I want you to come put a line down on Little Sean's track. You know, just come do a verse, and I'll pay you $7,000. Well, Tupac really needed this money because he was having a big legal fight. The legal fight was because in November 1993, it's funny, all this stuff happens to him in November.
Yeah.
September, November. In November 1993, he was arrested for sodomizing a woman in his hotel room. Ayanna Jackson said that she had performed public oral sex on him on the dance floor, and then the next day she went to his hotel room, where he and 3 other people forced her to perform oral sex, one of which was a man named Jacques Agnat, who was a music executive. And so Shakur said he was hurt that a woman would ever accuse him from taking something because he was so big on supporting the feminist movement and empowering women. That, I mean, I don't personally feel that he did it, but who knows? Although he wasn't convicted of that. He was convicted of groping because he did say that, yes, before she consented, he touched her buttocks. Mm-hmm. So the judge said, oh, you groped her. So he was convicted of touching her buttocks, groping, and sentenced to 18 months to 4.5 years because the grope was an act of brutal violence against a woman, according to the judge.
Groping a butt?
Yeah, well, kind of, I mean, so like grabbing a hold of her while you're making her blow people? It's probably not great. I mean, if that's the scenario she's painting,
Yeah.
it's probably not the best situation to be touching people.
Okay.
Well, Jacques Agnat was also accused as one of the four, and he pled to a misdemeanor and had no jail time.
Oh.
And so Shakur believed that Agnat had set him up with the case. And he believed that Ayanna Jackson was conspiring against him with these people, and he was even more convinced. So he was about to get sentenced, or they were going to tell him, his outcome. What's that? The verdict.
The conviction? Oh, the verdict for... Did
The
he go to
verdict.
trial?
He did.
Okay, so the verdict.
So and that's where he was brutalized a woman with groping. And by the way, it was overturned.
Okay. So he's not actually guilty.
Right. He did spend a lot of months in jail.
Okay.
In solitary confinement, by the way, where he couldn't speak to anyone. But so right before that, on November 30th, 1994, so this is the scenario. He was up to his eyeballs in legal trouble. And he, didn't have a whole lot of money or anything left. So they called him and was like, hey, we'll give you $7,000 just to come drop a verse. He didn't really want to, but he needed the cash, so he agreed. He arrived with Stretch and a few others, where 3 men waited on them in the lobby at Quad Studios in New York Times Square Garden. Madison Square
Garden in
That's
New
it.
York Times Square.
Thank you. Got there. And they robbed and beat them at gunpoint. Well, Tupac resisted, and they shot him. And so he went to the hospital, and right after his surgery, as soon as he was awake, he left, and he went to Jasmine Guy's house. You'll remember her from A Different World.
Oh, okay.
And so Jasmine Guy, his mom, and a private doctor were locked in Jasmine's house, where they cared for him, and the house was guarded by the Fruit of Islam, which is their militant group that protects the Nation of Islam, all of their mosques and stuff, and the Black Panther Party Guard.
Oh, shit.
So
they called in the cavalry.
Yeah, because he was convinced he was set up. Now, in 1995, Tupac had been pretty quiet, but he told Vibe magazine that he believed Biggie, Sean Combs, and Jimmy Henchman set him up, and were all involved because they were all at the studio that night. Mm-hmm. Jimmy Henchman was with Biggie and Sean, and later on, one of the gunmen confessed that, yes, he was hired by Henchman, and if Henchman's with you two, and you were there when he called you and you knew you weren't going to do tracks, then obviously you were part of it. It didn't help that a couple of months later, Combs and Biggie released the song Who Shot Ya?
Oh, great.
Yeah. It doesn't specifically name Tupac, but he responded with a diss song, and in hip-hop that is exactly what it means. You release a diss song to diss somebody, called Hit 'Em Up, where he targeted Wallace, Combs, and the record label, and the Junior Mafia. Targeted all of them. In June 2011, convicted murderer Dexter Isaac issued a confession that he had been involved under Henchman's orders, that he was one of the gunmen. And they did actually set him up.
Jeez.
And this is why he believed that since that same guy, the Henchman guy, called this hit on him, or at least, because they were supposed to kill him.
Yeah.
Right.
That he did try and set him up with this woman. Mm-hmm. So it does kind of seem to tell a story. And this is where he and Biggie split ways. Because he's like, dude, we were friends. How could you do this?
I was about to say that. If my homie... here's the thing. There's one thing for your person to be like, she's a trash Valorant player. She's a bitch. We don't want to hang out with her. That's one thing as your friend. To go and find somebody to shoot you?
Yeah.
Also, so here's the thing. Imagine Diddy's in Biggie's ear the whole time. Like, you're always going to be number 2 as long as he's around. You're always going to be number 2.
Oh, that's true.
You got to remember, like, Tupac hooked him up with Diddy, and this is for Puffy is who he is now, making terrible movies. They legit have, like, Bad Boy Records and...
Yeah, Death Row.
Yeah, they're not playing.
Yeah.
Well, and after this interview, all ties broke, and it became a war. Once Tupac fully acknowledged that, hey, this happened, they set me up, we're at war.
Yeah. So that's what started the rivalry with the East Coast, West Coast?
Yeah, that's what started it. So, he was in prison. Well, he was in jail when Me Against the World was released. And, it was released in 1995. At the same time, Reverend Al Sharpton had to come down and negotiated him to be released out of solitary. And so, during this time, he read a lot of books, because he hadn't really had time to read much, but he read, like, The Art of War, and he read The Prince.
Machiavelli.
Yeah, so he was reading a lot of these things. But when Me Against the World came out, he found out right then that his mom was losing her house. So I think in desperation, he had his then wife, Keisha Morris, reach out to Suge Knight. And this is how he became involved with Suge Knight, and she asked, could you help his mom? He immediately sent his mom $15,000 to save her house and have some money, because think about it, Tupac, this huge, like, multiple platinum
Cultural icon.
No money. I mean, they were destroying him.
And Suge Knight is a bad man.
Yes. He knew. I mean, he knew who to call for help, is what I'm thinking. So Suge Knight went and visited him in the penitentiary, and then he went to an awards show. And then later on that year, he came back to visit Tupac. And a lot of people think that during this time, when he first visited him, he was like, hey, I helped your mom. Just want you to think about joining on Death Row. Because Tupac wasn't officially on Death Row Records at this point.
And having watched interviews with Suge Knight, that's not how the conversation went. It was not a gentle ask.
No.
It's
probably like, I fucking helped your mom.
Oh, you're doing this.
Yeah.
Or we'll take the house.
Yeah. Thanks for calling me. Now I own you.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
I mean, that's how Suge Knight, he operated much like the Mafia does, where if you go to them for help, you're going to get hammered.
Yeah.
So
Right.
don't go to them for help.
Yeah,
And
your
they're gonna
interest
help
rate
you.
is going to be 3 times as much as what you asked for.
The
And it's
Viz
probably your
kills
pretty
you.
life.
Exactly what it was. Then he went later on in the year to visit Tupac, and he bails out. He had a $1.4 million bond for getting convicted of groping. And and this was the same time that this rivalry was genuinely born, because he joins Death Row Records immediately, and he now knows that, Biggie and Diddy and them set him up.
Yeah.
Well, he doesn't know it. Nobody knows for sure.
Nobody
pretty
knows.
sure. Yeah.
Nobody has snitched, but
At this
everybody
point, yeah.
knows what the rumors are.
In 1996, Tupac's first Death Row record came out, and it was titled All Eyes on Me. And this one, it was not his, hold your head up.
No.
It was gangster rap.
Yeah.
100% fully embraced Death Row Records. So if you go to listen to what you're used to Tupac sounding like, and you listen to All Eyes on Me, you're just like, is this even Tupac?
Yeah, but there's been a significant change in circumstance at this point.
Yeah. Now, there's some other stuff that happened in 93. So in October of 93, he was arrested for shooting 2 Atlanta police officers. So the police officers said Tupac pulled up and just started shooting at him. Nobody even knows why.
Oh.
But there were so many eyewitnesses and Tupac himself that said, no. We were waiting in the light. We saw these 2 off-duty police officers and their wife. They were brothers. Mark and Scott Whitwell. Can't read my writing. Mark and Scott Whitwell and their wives were crossing the road, they said, and Tupac's car hit them, and then they opened fire. Tupac says, no, we pulled up, and you were harassing a black motorist and yelling racial slurs. When we got out to defend the motorist, you shot at us first, and we shot back in self-defense. Now, there were multiple people who witnessed it. Every one of them had the same story as Tupac. So, charges were dropped against both of them. Were dropped against the cops and dropped against Tupac. But the cop ended up resigning 7 months later because he had been, forensics proved he had fired first into Tupac's car, and he had stolen the gun from the Henry County evidence lockup.
Nice.
So, yeah, I figured you'd like that, being in your neck of the woods.
Oh, shit.
So, this is right. So he then writes a song about racist cops, and he's like, he has a song previously about the San Francisco cops where he call them, you racist, bigot, gay, little dick motherfuckers. But
I mean, it seems like that's a sentiment that has continued on for many, many, many years.
yeah. So this is where we are. He has this, thing with Biggie on the East Coast. He's now part of Death Row Records. He's really having to do what Suge Knight says. And he's just harder.
I don't think you could you know, a lot of people saying, like, you hear his music prior to All Eyes on Me and then here. Think about what he went through that last 2 years of
especially
his life.
He was in prison for almost a year.
If you think you've been
months of it in solitary.
Yeah, months of it in solitary. You think you've been set up by who
your friends.
who you think is your friends, and also been shot, and nobody believes you other than these people
Right.
who maybe are fans or anything like that who have no influence on the system.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to be freaking hard as shit by the end of that.
Mm-hmm. And so he's entered also a different lifestyle, where he's, you know, actually surrounded by these, you know, big time gangbangers, and not just drug dealers, but it reflects in his music what he's around.
It also is. It helps Suge Knight with the image of Death Row. He can't have. I know it sounds crazy, but you can't have a poetic Tupac on there talking about women's rights. That's not what Death Row's about. And
No.
Yeah.
they ain't playing.
I mean, you're literally called Death Row Records.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got an image to uphold, which I don't agree with at all, but if that's what you're going
Well,
for.
I wonder how much of that, the Tupac changing his style, is Suge Knight. Suge Knight has been known to hang people off the edge of buildings and shake them, and like, if you don't do what we say, we're going to drop you.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he did that to Vanilla Ice, of all people. To
Yeah.
be threatened with murder. Vanilla Ice.
Yeah.
But apparently there's a lot of stories of that going around. Apparently didn't he get in trouble a few years ago for hitting somebody, like running them down with his SUV, like 5 or 6 years ago. They said they were trying to run away, and he just hit them with his car. Like, the hell with it.
Right outside. He did. Yeah.
Like, that's Suge Knight. That's the real guy. He don't play.
Yeah.
Probably responsible for multiple murders.
Oh, no doubt.
I mean,
No doubt.
so a lot of that is probably what is happening to Tupac. Like, he got in bed with a shark, and it was a mistake.
Right. So kind of keep that rolling around in the back of your mind too when we talk about future state
Yeah.
of when we get to where is Tupac dead, because you think about this highly creative poetic soul now rolling with this guy who pretty much goes against a lot of the stuff that you've written about and believe in. So when he was in prison, he was visited by just a couple of people. He was visited by Al Sharpton, the Reverend Al Sharpton, Jasmine Guy, and Madonna, who admitted that in 1994 they had dated.
Mm-hmm.
And so his really good friends, and of course his friend Stretch, he had 5 people who consistently visited him. His marriage ended up getting annulled to Keisha, so I think it wasn't anything ugly. He just, you're in prison, you just got married, she needs to continue with her life, and you're broke. Also, after he signed to Death Row Records, pretty much all of his music and stuff went to Death Row Records.
Yeah, that's how they work.
Mm-hmm. So you have Suge Knight, and God, I don't want to say too much to get killed. Suge Knight is scary.
Yeah.
But
Suge Knight's a scary human being, but I don't think he cares about the TheFreeRotation podcast.
No, but can you imagine? He's like, oh my God.
He rolls up here. Heard y'all was saying some shit.
Let me tell you,
Like,
suddenly,
really?
fat girl can run. Like, I'm jumping that fence in the back, and I'll just take my chances with alligators. Like, I'm done. There's no alligators back there, but in my mind, there is.
We live in the, if anybody doesn't know, we live in the low country bayous of Metro Atlanta.
Also, if he does do that, I'll be like, hey, man, I told them bitches, Suge. I was on your side the whole time.
Yeah.
Snitches get bitches.
Well, he's been making money off of Tupac this whole time. So, it's coming up where Tupac is he's feeling himself because he's about to come into a big royalty payment.
Yeah.
So, this is roll around the back of your head, too. On September 6, 1996, Tupac went to Las Vegas to celebrate business partner Tracy Danielle Robinson's birthday. They attended the Bruce Seldon? Bruce Seldon versus Mike Tyson boxing match with Suge Knight at the MGM Grand. Now, Tupac was super hyped up because Tyson had beaten him in 90 seconds and less than a dozen blows. Like, he only hit him 20 times. So Tupac comes out saying, he only hit him 20 times. He only hit him 20 times. Well, one of his really good friends who have been with him since the beginning, not Stretch, but I can't think of the other guy's name, pointed to this guy who was standing there. The guy's name was Orlando Baby Lane Anderson. And he was like, hey, that's the guy who tried to snatch my Death Row Records chain off my neck. Now, I mean, keep in mind, this is your gang insignia.
Yeah.
And Tupac's like, oh, fucking really? So he goes over there and he beats shit out of the guy. I mean, as you kind of have to.
Right.
Suge Knight's right there. And this guy disrespected you, and it only happened like a couple of days previously. So they beat the crap out of the guy and then leave. Well, the police come. The only one left there is Anderson. Laying on the floor. I mean, they literally made him eat carpet. They threw him down, kicked him, really beat the crap out of him. So Suge and Tupac leave. They go to the hotel room for a couple hours, and then they head out. Nobody really knows what happened in that time, but then they head out to go to the Death Row Records Club 9662. Well, they get pulled over by these mounted bicycle cops who are like, hey, your music's too fucking loud and you don't have any tags. So they're like, we have tags. They're in the trunk. But we do have tags, and this happened at 11 o'clock. They talk to these mounted bikers. And I don't know, not bikers, but bicyclists. And then they go just a little bit down up and get stopped at a red light. While they're at the red light, a white caddy pulls up, opens fire, and they fire, I think, like 16 times. 4 of them hit Tupac, 2 in the chest, 1 goes into his right lung, 1 into his arm, 1 into his thigh. Suge Knight gets hit by shrapnel. Pretty much it scrapes his head. He, lays on the gas, floors it, does a U-turn, and goes back the other way, and then right back to the mounted bicyclist where they stop, and you get, they don't have body cameras at the time, but they do have their recorded footage, oh my God, we need medical here ASAP. And that's pretty much what we know about the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And because nobody's ever said a thing. There were multiple cars in the entourage that night. Tupac's bodyguard was in the car with Khadija Jones, who was his girlfriend at the time. And so it was Suge and Tupac in the front, and then the rest of them. Multiple cars. Nobody, we didn't see a thing. We have no idea who did it. We didn't see a thing.
Mm-hmm.
The cops on the bicycles who literally were just right there. We didn't really see anything. And he goes into the hospital, and they do surgery. And it comes out, the doctor says, hey, he's got a 1 in 5 chance of survival. And then on the 3rd day, he's like, oh, his prognosis is actually doing much better. And then all of a sudden, the next day, we're told, oh, he died. Here's where it gets interesting. One account that MTV issued at the time was that his mom took him off life support unexpectedly. They don't know why, but I guess he took a turn for the worse. She took him off life support. Then some things have come out that yes, he was gaining consciousness and he was in critical condition, he had to have help breathing because he lost his lung, but that he was doing okay. And then there was a one that said he died of internal bleeding, and the official cause of death was heart and lung failure.
Mm-hmm.
So you have all these differences that people are saying that he died from. That's what's led to people wondering, did he die?
Right.
And there was also people who said they saw him leave, they saw Michael Jackson leaving the hospital. Yeah.
It's kind of fun. I mean, not fun. It's one of those things where you really, it's so much more interesting to think that maybe they faked his death for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
And
Elvis style.
Yeah, and that he's somewhere still making music, and it's all posthumous death releases.
So if his mom actually would have taken him off life support, wouldn't that have been written up as heart and lung failure?
Mm-hmm.
If it's,
yeah.
I mean, that's just kind of how that works.
You would take that. You would issue a medical thing to have him taken off because at that moment his heart and lungs were failing. He wasn't going to survive, or he could not survive without assisted
and you know
oxygen.
Why he can't be, he can't be dug up and reinvestigated or recornered. Recornered. I'm standing by that word.
Recornered.
Because they immediately, hours, cremated him.
Yeah.
And then they literally put him in a pipe with marijuana and smoked him like his song Black Jesus.
Wait, really?
Yeah, really. They did.
They smoked his ashes?
Yeah. They smoked some of his ashes with marijuana because it's a lyric in his song Black Jesus.
I had a lot of people I knew that were like, Tupac's not dead. I'm like, yeah, he's probably dead. Who's been able to fake their own death for years and be fine with it? Everybody says Elvis is very dead. Tupac, also very dead.
Yeah, I'm not of the inclination to believe that he's still alive. Although it'd be kind of cool if they had figured out a way. He's like under the witness protection program or something. He's been spotted.
Mm-hmm. Now in part 2, we're going to go more into depth, but here's some of the theories that he went into witness protection, because one of the things that a reporter uncovered was that the FBI was doing an investigation into extortion from what is that Jewish thing where they look for Nazis? What's that organization called?
The Reich? The Third Reich?
No,
that is the Nazis,
that's the
Becky.
Nazis.
Oh, I thought, what you mean, like looking for Nazis?
Yeah, the FBI investigation into Tupac's death, the
Jewish Defense League?
the Jewish Defense League. Still couldn't remember it. Which was a closed investigation that not many people, and they were investigating a couple of people who were being extorted by this group. Also, I can't remember, Eazy-E, I think, and one other person, but you never really heard about that. They also investigated Biggie because of what happened at Quad Studios. And the guy that he beat the shit out of, they barely questioned this guy. Even though he had the most reason for doing it at the time, but they said they had kept him asking him questions so long. Because remember, everybody else fucked off. He was the only one left there.
Because he couldn't move.
Eating shit, And they're like, no, he couldn't have done it because we detained him. The other thought is that, isn't it unusual in that all of these series of cars, it seemed like these mounted bicycle cops stopped him and delayed. Because it was so unusual, like, to question stuff and how quickly they let him go, but it seemed like it was at a set time.
Yeah, but if they didn't again, I look at coincidences. If they didn't have tags on their car and the cops flagged them down, like, oh yeah, they're in the trunk, like,
right, and showed it to them.
That's not helpful though. The cops don't know it's in the trunk.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and they're like, no, we have tags. We'll put them on, and we'll
like,
turn our music down. Like, why are you going to keep them for much longer?
Maybe and maybe it was just coincidental.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the white car with Orlando Anderson, who murdered him, was waiting on him.
Yeah.
Like, maybe they were just sitting up at the next intersection.
That's right. We know where they're going. They're going to Club 662.
So we could just sit here parked.
Yeah. Another theory is that Suge Knight did it because he wanted to avoid the royalty payments. It's Suge Knight.
I tell you, the 90s were a worse time to be a musical artist because your management was murdering you. Think about Selena.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I have a hard time, even though Suge Knight is Suge Knight, he was in the car and he very well could have easily been killed.
But was not injured other than some shrapnel.
A scratch on his head, yeah. So you kind of there's theories that Suge Knight did it for royalty reasons. He did it because of Jada, and also he did it just to give more clout to his records, or it could have been a mix of all three. The fact that Biggie was then killed 6 months later in Los Angeles, they took Biggie off as a suspect. Said, nah, don't think this is it.
He probably didn't do it.
Yeah.
Or he absolutely did do it, and this was retaliation.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it was Orlando Anderson.
Well, there was some people who, at the time, and I can't remember who exactly the quote is from, that said, when the hood becomes convinced that the police aren't going to, solve a murder, they do it themselves. So, Biggie getting killed,
Yeah.
very well could have been hood justice. And there was this theory that, the government was concerned about him because up until he signed with Death Row Records, he was being touted as the new Malcolm X. He was all for political, social, reform. He was, the African American community was rallying behind him. They were, thinking about the things in his lyrics, and he was leading a movement, and then suddenly he wasn't. But he still was. I mean, at any point, if he had turned and said, hey, let's do this. Unlike, Watts' dumbass who ran for president, I really could see a world where,
Kanye?
yeah, where people would have supported Tupac.
Mm-hmm.
Kanye Jetta.
But yeah, so that's Tupac's life.
Part 1.
Part 1. And we'll get into the theories and what happened afterwards, the investigation and stuff, and Biggie. We're going to focus on what happened with Biggie and how it relates back to Tupac and what might have linked them other than the war of East-West.
Gotcha.
and
Okay.
how it's impacted hip hop.
This is quite an intricate story.
It is. It is. But I would recommend, if you never have, to listen to Tupac's music before All Eyes on Me. Listen to, Hold Your Head Up. Listen to Trapped.
Go watch any Spike Lee movie from the early to mid 90s. He's in all of
Yeah,
them.
yeah. Watch these movies. He's incredible. He's so well spoken. He's so smart. So good looking. And he
That's
had
a nice
such
looking man right
a
there.
diverse group of friends that were loyal to him and he was loyal to. And yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well,
All right.
we'll go pick up part 2.
Mhm.
Part 2 next week.
Yes.
Time to... And I'm still trying to figure out how Gangsta's Paradise plays into all of this.
Okay, that's Coolio.
Okay. A Beautiful Mind.
Michelle Pfeiffer.
A Dangerous Mind. Michelle Pfeiffer. We'll get there one day, right?
And do you know... Okay, so, Becky, knowing what you know, I told you about hip-hop and rap.
Hip Hop Anonymous.
When you hear hip-hop... when you hear Gangsta's Paradise and Coolio... Exactly. Where would you say that falls on? Would you say it's old school hip hop or the new hip hop?
Wait. Old school.
Yes, because it has a single solid beat.
Yes.
Ding, ding, and it repeats the lines.
Right.
Been spending most our love.
Yes.
Okay.
R.I.P. to Nate Dogg. He's also gone too soon.
Yeah.
Rest in Power King.
Angie didn't know Triple X Tenation had died.
I did it.
Tentacion.
That's
Triple X Tenations.
Temptation.
Yeah, he's just a giant piece of shit.
That guy's a giant piece of shit, but listen, this is all interesting stuff I don't know.
All right. And then next week you're gonna learn about Biggie.
You gonna learn today.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us down our Tupac road.
Papa been smooth since days of Underoos.
Oh shit. Okay.
All right.
All right.
Bye, y'all.
Later.